Good evening, Gonzaga families. My name is Samantha Lembo, and I am the Student Leader Coordinator for Parent and Family Relations. I am a senior psychology major, sociology minor from Anaheim Hills, California, and I have the distinct privilege to introduce to you now Dr. Thayne Mccullough, the 26th president of Gonzaga University. Dr. Mccullough is himself a graduate of Gonzaga, a proud member of the class of 1989. He holds a bachelor's from Gonzaga and a PhD from Oxford University in England. In the course of the last 30 years, he has come to know Gonzaga well, serving as Dean of Students, Dean of Financial Services, Vice President for Administration and Planning, and the Academic Vice President. Trained as an experimental psychologist, he has also been an active faculty member. In other words, he knows this institution as very few people do, and his love for Gonzaga is shown in many ways, but first and foremost in his care for our students. He is deeply committed to a broadly based liberal arts education that prepares students to be critical thinkers, outstanding professionals, and living exemplars of the Jesuit dictum to be persons with and for others. Himself a sterling example of how a Gonzaga education can lead to a meaningful life of work. He inspires his colleagues in the academic and student services to do their best work. It is my pleasure to introduce to you an inspirational leader whose primary goal is to ensure that your sons and daughters have the best student learning experience they can have, as Gonzaga attempts to provide them with the foundation for lives of mature responsibility, intelligent leadership, and a successful and fulfilling life. This evening's webinar will include an approximately 45-minute welcome and presentation from Dr. Mccullough, followed by an opportunity for Q&A with the typed Q&A feature. Please join me in welcoming our president, Dr. Thayne Mccullough.
Good evening. Good evening and welcome. Those of you who are joining us, we expect that there may be people who will be kind of beaming in and out of the webinar here this afternoon. But on behalf of Gonzaga and my many colleagues here at the institution, I want to take this opportunity more than anything else to say welcome and hello, and hopefully this is an opportunity that we can have together to both share a little bit about what it is that that we hope for the upcoming year and the years beyond, and also to take questions that you might have for me and questions that I might be able to respond to here, and if not, on the webinar itself, we'll make sure that there are opportunities to follow up. But it is really a privilege to be with you and to have this chance to talk a little bit about Gonzaga from my vantage point, and more than anything to also express both gratitude and hopefully some themes that will be important for you to know, and to know that we hold as we embark upon the experience of this next academic year. Before I move into some reflections this afternoon, I wanted to share with you that we would appreciate if you have any questions that emerge for you out of anything that I might say, or anything that's on your mind that you want to know more about or to hear about, that you feel free to enter questions using the Q&A function that's at the bottom of the screen. And we will endeavor to try to capture those questions, and my colleagues will provide me as questions come in with the opportunity to know those and to hear some of the themes that are coming forward. So again, feel free to use that function as part of this webinar. I thought where I might begin with this particular opportunity is where over these last years I've actually tried to begin, notwithstanding the very unusual and challenging circumstances that we as a country and as an international community as well have been dealing with for these past 7 months or so. There are a lot of longer term aspirations that I have for Gonzaga, and in particular for the experience that your daughters or sons or sisters or brothers or grandchildren, nieces and nephews, the students of Gonzaga will have during their time with us. We are not unique as a higher ed institution with respect to the challenges and the issues that we've been trying to work with during this time. But we are unique in many other ways, and certainly distinctive. And so to me, it feels in this very unusual situation where, unlike any other year, we would be having this session in person and gathering together and be able to see one another both ways, that I still want to touch on some of the things that are very much at the core and at the foundation of our work as a university, and that are really important from my perspective to share with you as well, because they will continue notwithstanding the mode in which we are attempting to do our work, whether people are trying to do that from a distance or they're trying to do that together in person, that the issues that are really at the heart of our institution in some ways don't change, that they're very much the same, and in some ways perhaps some of those issues become even more important in a circumstance like this one. So a little bit first, if I could, I'd like to share about who I am. And that's merely, again, in service to the development of what I hope for all of us will be a longer term relationship. And certainly in my deepest desires, I hope we do have many opportunities in the future to come together and to meet one another and to know a little bit about each other. I myself attended Gonzaga University for my undergraduate degree. But before that, I was a young person who largely spent the latter part of my growing up years in Seattle. And I like to tell parents as well as our students that there was a long stretch of time in my life where I sort of categorized everybody in either one of two camps. The first was people who loved high school and really looked fondly on their high school experience. And then there were those who maybe had a tougher time and maybe didn't look so fondly on their high school experience. And I'm in the latter camp. I'm one of those kids who struggled through high school. I had a lot of difficulty that arose for me in that context, and a lot of challenges that I was trying to deal with at home. And so to put a little bit of a twist on that, I actually graduated from high school with a very low GPA. My GPA was a 1.79. And I like to share with our students that GPA was achieved and includes my excellent work in choir. But I had a miserable time in a lot of the more basic and essential requirements of a high school curriculum. So when I left high school, um, I did not have the prospects that so many of the students that come to Gonzaga today uh, do have by virtue of having done so well. And we are very proud of the students who come to Gonzaga. Uh, but when I attempted to come to Gonzaga the first time with that kind of a GPA, as you can imagine, I was not accepted. So my life took a different route. I actually entered the military. I enlisted in the US Army and I became an Army cook. And I served on active duty for 3 years, much of that in uh, Leesville, Louisiana at Fort Polk. But that experience changed my life. It gave me an opportunity to have a fresh start. It gave me the opportunity to discover that I was capable of doing many things that I never would have had the opportunity to do or have been challenged to do had I not joined the military. And so while the work was hard, because cooking for many people in many successive days and environments is challenging work and can be very difficult hours. It was a time that I look back on with deep appreciation. It was a time that helped me to discover both what I was capable of, but also in part what I wanted to do with my life. The military also helped me to understand the importance of education. It helped me to learn through the experience of working alongside other soldiers who had not had the opportunities to be educated the way that I had been. What some of the challenges that befell them and faced them in their lives as a result of not receiving the educational opportunities that I had been given would be for them a limitation that they would carry throughout their life, and really limited options for them in many respects. So out of the military, I learned a lot about myself, but I also learned about the power and the importance that education holds, and in my view, still holds today in our society. How education does really open doors and become, for those who can access it, a path to a better life and to opportunities that simply are not available without that experience. So in many respects, the military was a necessary and important path for me to discovering more deeply the importance of being committed to the work of becoming educated. But it really did create a foundation for me as well in terms of my own commitment to the educational mission of higher education. I also would share with you that as a result of not going to college immediately out of high school, while I certainly matured and became more confident and also grew in my understanding of how important going to college would be, by the time I arrived at Gonzaga, I was a little bit older than most of the other students who were entering at the time I was. And so as a result, though I had been looking forward to the experience of being at Gonzaga for all the years between high school and when I actually arrived, I kind of felt like I didn't fit in. I was a little older. I found that I was together with other college students who hadn't had the same kind of experiences that I had had, and who were just discovering, for example, what it might be like to live on your own or away from home in ways that had already been part of my own experience. So um, the bottom line is that I had so much looked forward to college, and then ironically found myself kind of lonely and not sure whether or not this was going to work. Um, remember, uh, Gonzaga University was where I found myself, and at the same time, um, really was sort of searching for how it is that I could become a part of this community that I had so much looked forward to being a part of. So, in the ways that only mothers and fathers can, I found myself probably halfway through the semester of the first fall that I was here calling home. And I talked with my mom. And my mom is a very wise woman because at the end of the day, she's infinitely practical. And she shared with me kind of three pieces of advice. The first piece of advice was, you know, this is a big change, this adjustment from what you've been doing these past years to going to college, and change is something that takes time. It takes a lot longer to adjust than you might at first realize. So you've got to give it time. You've got to give this a chance. Don't expect that within a couple of weeks you're going to all of a sudden magically adjust and feel as though you're fitting right in. She said, no, that's not how these kinds of things work. Change takes time. It takes adjustment. It takes adaptation. So try to give it a little more time. The second thing she said was, what have you gotten involved with while you're there? What have you volunteered for? What have you signed up for? What have you gotten connected to? She said, you know, I was reading about Gonzaga, and Gonzaga has a lot of opportunities for students to get involved. There's clubs and organizations I've read about. There's even religious retreats, and there's student government. You've always kind of been interested in student government. Have you gotten connected to any of those kinds of things? And the truth is that I really hadn't. I had come ready to get focused and focus on my academic work. And that's where I had been spending my energy and my time. But I really hadn't taken the time to see what else was going on, what else I might connect to. So I thought about it, and I said, you know, I think I will look into other opportunities. And the third thing that she shared with me, which again goes to kind of my own mom's practical nature, she said, look, at worst, stick it out until the end of the semester. Because if you finish the semester and you complete the courses, then at least you'll have those credits and you can transfer them to another institution. So her understanding, her knowledge of the academic life and the way that college works was sufficient to ultimately say, you've gotten this far, you might as well even just finish the semester, because that alone allows you, to have something that you can take with you if you decide to go somewhere else. Well, I've been here at Gonzaga University working since 1990. So I probably don't need to tell you that I did stick it out. And I actually did ultimately complete my degree, which was in psychology. And following Gonzaga, I wanted to pursue psychology because I had fallen in love with it as a subject that I came here never expecting to know or fall in love with. I came here wanting to be an attorney. I like people. I enjoy knowing how people work, but psychology just wasn't a field that I knew much about. And yet, as a result of the courses I took, I found myself intrigued with it and ultimately made the determination that it was something that I wanted to explore further. Gonzaga's core curriculum, the breadth of experiences and opportunities that came with the courses that I was able to participate in, they in turn created an amazing array of experiences that I was able to represent as I began to apply for grad schools. And as a result, from Gonzaga, I ultimately studied in England and completed my doctorate in experimental social psychology, which ultimately allowed me to return to the work of teaching here at my own alma mater. And so a part of my own experience of learning and growing at Gonzaga ultimately gave me the chance to give back to my own institution and to the students who followed me here. And I'm always going to be grateful to the faculty and the staff who taught me, worked with me, challenged me, and gave me the opportunity to aspire to other levels of higher education and other experiences within the profession, because it has allowed me in turn to become an active part of the work that Gonzaga does every year for so many students, and over the years, hopefully created opportunities for students who in turn have become alums and contributing members of the professions and the communities and the works of which they in turn are a part. This is a community, and I'm grateful that you have chosen to become a part of this vibrant learning community. Last spring, when COVID-19 became a part of our lived reality, we were obligated to take steps, and candidly, in that space, some unpopular steps at the time that were informed by one of the perennial values that informs this community. While our faculty do conduct research together with their students, and the academic mission of our institution is central to our identity, at the core, at the heart of this institution is the welfare and well-being of our students. When we learned that COVID-19 was being unleashed around the world, the first action that we took was to reach out to our students studying abroad, and we worked with them to bring them home. We operate a campus in Italy, in Florence, that by the end of February, very suddenly and very quickly, no longer had students. And we believe that even though it might have been possible in that situation for students to remain and to continue to enjoy the opportunities of studying abroad, the best, safest, and most prudent decision we could have made was to ask them to return, because we did not have a good handle on whether or not the pandemic would impact the healthcare system that our students also relied upon in ways that might overwhelm them and compromise the safety and welfare of our students abroad. I have been involved, as our gracious host indicated in her introduction, with many different aspects of this institution over my 30 years of work here. Sometime in student life or student affairs, as we now call it. Sometime in the academic realm of the institution. But I will share with you that a perennial value for our community is our students. We care for them. We challenge them. We're intentional about recognizing that our work is ultimately focused on their formation and their development. And we are interested beyond ensuring that their academic work is appropriately rigorous and allows them to be prepared to enter the next phase of their education, their life, their profession, to also be paying attention to who they are as individual people. We receive our students at Gonzaga as individuals who have already been through many years of formative experiences by the time they come here. Each of them are unique, gifted individuals who have been formed in largest part by parents and family members, and also by the educational and co-curricular experiences that they have had along the way. Many of our students come to us who, through the experiences of their education and related activities, understand the value of service and the importance of other people in our lives. Many of our students are talented musicians who have had the experience of working at their craft and in turn imparting the gift of their talent to other people. Many of our students come to us having served in leadership at their high schools or other institutions and understand the importance of cultivating relationships of appreciation and gratitude at the heart of effective leadership. So as we come together as community, we receive each and every one of our students, both new and returning, as individuals of tremendous capability and talent. And we are excited about the opportunity of engaging your sons, your daughters, your family members in this truly important project of higher education. We seek during this time to help our students understand the significance of the gifts and the talents that they possess, and the importance that comes with continuing to nurture and cultivate those gifts and talents, ultimately in service to the world, but even while they're here, in service to each other. Our faculty come from around the country and around the world. They are attracted to the work we do at Gonzaga because of the student-centered nature of our mission. And because along the way, we have worked hard to continue to develop the kinds of environments and structures that allowed them to do cutting-edge work and to challenge the students in their courses to excel and to gain an appreciation for where their disciplines have moved and what many of the issues, concerns, arguments, and challenges of those disciplines present to us today. What motivates us at Gonzaga to continue to do this work, even during a pandemic and in the context of the challenges that we face, is our belief that this country and our world continues to need talented, gifted, exceptional individuals to contribute to the professions of which they become a part, and the search for knowledge that constitutes progressive degrees of educational attainment in service to forming a better world than the one we currently occupy. There are many needs, issues, and challenges that we face as a nation and as a world that will fall firmly at the feet of this generation that we have a small part in helping to form and develop. Those challenges will be magnified in the post-COVID era. And we believe that we have a role and a responsibility, no matter what context or environmental challenge might befall us, to do our best to continue to fulfill the obligations of our higher education mission. Our faculty have, throughout the summer, been working together with our deans and our provost and other senior administrators to prepare for the work that comes to us this fall, and to prepare for the students that come and return to us as well. We are very gratified by the level of support that our families and our students have reflected in the decisions they have made to participate in this academic mission this year. We are excited about some of the innovative approaches and the opportunities that our faculty and our colleagues in areas such as student affairs, mission and ministry, career and professional development, and other allied and affiliated departments have been working hard to create for the academic year that is before us. There are a significant number of students who have elected to return to Spokane or to begin their work with us this fall on campus. And there is also a portion of our student population that is choosing to participate or to continue their program work via remote modalities. We are going to be working each and every day to more deeply understand the needs of the students that are participating in our programs this year, and to continue to find the best ways of adapting in our support for them. I have shared with our colleagues that the national and international phenomena that we are experiencing as a function of COVID-19 obligates us to think not in terms that are necessarily negative, although there are many negative consequences of this disease and the economic challenges that befall us, but rather in terms of what challenges we can convert into opportunities this situation creates for us. We as an institution believe that it is our obligation to do everything possible to continue, whether a student is participating with us on campus or from a distance, in helping them to connect or reconnect as unique and gifted and contributive participants in the building of our community this year. And we're going to do everything we can to try to support that level of participation and to supplement where it is clear that there yet need to be opportunities for our students to connect. It is very important that I share with you as well in these remarks our ongoing commitment to doing everything that we can, even though we know that some of the realities of our circumstance create limitations and challenges that require creative responses, to do everything that we can to ensure that each of our students receives the full attention of their faculty and the colleagues from our institution in support of their own aspirations and desires. We want our students to feel that even though there may be challenges, they are nonetheless given opportunities to grow, to be challenged and stretched, to be transformed, to understand that this is an opportunity for us to think of new ways of doing work that recognize that some rather recent innovations, at least for the experience of many of us, like the use of Zoom, may become permanently a part of the culture in new and different ways. And that those who think not in terms of the limitations of such technologies, but rather the opportunities to, in a positive way, exploit such technologies, may be much better positioned and advantaged in the times to come than those who are not given those opportunities or do not have the chance to learn how those technologies might be harnessed to their advantage. We want our students to continue, despite the challenges that they themselves have been facing during this period, to experience moments of inspiration, to experience moments of consolation, to be able to share with each other the stories of this time and what wisdom can be derived out of this time. How these moments of challenge and concern and grief and mourning can become opportunities of learning and discovery and change that can be put to work for the betterment of their own experience, their educational journey, their professional development, and ultimately the transformation of our world. Because alongside COVID-19, we know there continue to be many challenges that individuals, communities, and our society face. This last number of days, for example, I have been acutely aware of the fact that we have students and alumni who are dealing with the challenges of the wildfires that are currently raging in California, some in Wyoming, and in other places that affect families and communities. We are acutely aware that some of the challenges that our society's response to COVID-19 has created for our healthcare systems have in turn created real challenges for individuals who are suffering from other diseases and who have, as a result, been limited in the forms of treatment that are available to them. Many more people in this country are unemployed today because of the economic impact that staying at home, isolating, disease, and challenges to the ability of many businesses to continue to operate have created for families and communities. We're very conscious of the challenges that families who have school-age children are facing in many of our communities by virtue of fears well-founded of communicating the disease in situations where K-12 systems and schools are questioning whether to reopen and to resume their work or not. Of course, this points to the active reality that we are all interconnected and interdependent. Our work this summer has been ongoing, complex, and completely committed to the cause of trying to determine how best to proceed in the professional development and academic work that our programs at Gonzaga University are intended to provide, while doing so in as safe and as diligent and prudent a manner as we possibly can effect. This community has been working hard to try to ascertain, using the very best information that can be provided through our regional health district and through other expertise, what it means to resume our work in a safe manner and a thoughtful manner. And while we believe we have responded to the challenges in a number of different ways as effectively as we can, we also recognize that this year is going to bring for us some questions and some challenges that we have yet to fully understand and encounter. But we are committed, guided by our principles of putting our students' health and welfare at the forefront of our efforts, to doing everything we can in supporting them to do their work in a safe, responsible way, even as we do the work as a faculty and staff and administration in the safest and most effective way we can as well. Something that is perhaps an important thing for you as families to be aware of is that while Gonzaga certainly found itself mid-spring in a circumstance where, as many of our students were actually on spring break, we were obligated to ask our students to go or to remain at home. We have, since that time until this very day, continued to support students who have been living and working, and this summer with our faculty conducting research as well as academic work right here on the campus, as well as continuing to be aware of and supporting the engagement of students who have been living off campus, albeit not in the same numbers as we would ordinarily have during a full academic year. These opportunities have nonetheless allowed us, and with a number of students who really needed our support and needed to continue their work with us, to conduct our work in a way that allowed us to thoughtfully and realistically explore how we can continue to work in as safe and effective a way as possible. And Gonzaga University has thus far experienced a very low rate of incidence of COVID-19. In fact, the reported incidences have largely involved individuals who have a connection to the university, but did not end up being involved with the university in such a way that it created an event of exposure. So we are going to continue as we move into this academic year to find our way. And we are going to ask our students to be involved with us in new ways, but in ways that our current students have already demonstrated as they walk the campus and continue to participate with us through the residence hall system, that they are fully capable of. And where we need to respond with care and concern and support, we will do so. It is a hallmark of the community that we are, and it is reflective of the values of the people who work at Gonzaga University. And we will, and I will close with this, also turn to you, our parents and our families, to be actively engaged together with us in the work that we do this year. One of the decisions that we made quite a long time ago as a university was out of a recognition that our students do better work when they have the active and engaged support of a community that includes their parents and a university that values the connections that they have with their families and the opportunities that we can create when we all are working together. My colleague, Amy Swank, who leads our parent and family office and support network, can testify to the many relationships that we have developed within and together with our parents and families, this university, that have been richly deepened by the involvement of our families and our parent and family council. We believe that it is important, in order for our students to do their best work, to have parents, a parent, a family member who feels that there are easily accessible opportunities for them who constitute such an important part of the support system for our students to have ready access to, and opportunities thereby to know what is happening at the institution and the kinds of issues that we believe they need to be aware of and informed about. So when we talk about Zag Nation, when we talk about the Gonzaga community, we always think about our parents and our family members as well as our students. We're committed to ensuring that as we move into the year and through it, that you are able to know and receive regular communication from us about what is happening at the institution and the kinds of issues that we believe it's important for parents and family members to know about. One of my favorite stories that relates to this comes out of an experience that I had when I first became president. We ordinarily have a parent and family weekend each fall on campus. We know that the current circumstance is not going to allow us to do that the same way this year as we ordinarily do. But in this particular situation some years ago, I ran into some parents at a reception that we were hosting. And I asked them, what major was their daughter in? And they said, oh, we don't have a daughter at Gonzaga anymore. Our daughter graduated a number of years ago, but we still come back every year for the fall family weekend because, well, we got to know other parents while we were parents here, and we've just decided that we're going to make it a tradition, even though our kids are no longer here. That to me really affirmed the experience that I hope you will have as well. Even during this very strange time, my hope is that you will feel connected and very much a part of not only your own son or daughter's experience, but also of this community. And that we have an opportunity through that experience in turn to continue to share with you who we are, what our deepest desires are as an institution, and to learn from you as well as our students how we can continue to build up this great university. It is a community of care, of concern, and a community that holds one another accountable as well. And I truly hope that though we are in this very strange time where all of us are being called upon to be very creative and very patient, and to find those reserves of willpower and grace that you know that we are absolutely committed to continuing to do this work in the best way possible, and that we are looking forward to the year to come, even as we all also find ourselves walking along a path that, with additional hope, will move us out of this period of time as quickly as possible. So with that, I'm going to go ahead then and turn my time over to my colleagues, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And we will continue until the appointed hour has concluded. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues.
Before we begin the Q&A period, I'd like to remind everybody that we are recording this session, and if you do need to leave, it will be posted on the Parent and Family Orientation website. We do have one question in the Q&A chat right now. The first one is, how will you be handling students who may have been exposed or contracted COVID prior to the academic year, i.e. this summer?
So our approach to the work that we are doing this year is to very much depend upon our students, first of all, to let us know what their health status is. And in the guidance that we have provided, we are asking that if students have symptoms or believe that they may have contracted COVID, that they take it upon themselves to work with their healthcare provider to determine whether or not, given the symptoms and given the potential for exposure, a test is warranted. And if the determination of the medical provider and the patient is that indeed a test is warranted, that they will go ahead and proceed.
This is a test of the paging system. This is only a test.
And then, pardon me, and then
this is a test of the paging system.
we would go ahead
and
have a opportunity, hopefully, to hear from them and to know how long they will be deferring their arrival to campus, so that we can work with them and determine whether or not.
This is a test of the paging system.
Me.
This is only a test.
I'm going to disconnect this. Very distracting. We're testing everything today. The intent is to try to ask our students who may be infected to remain at home and to continue to remain away from campus until they are cleared of symptoms. We understand, based upon the guidance that we've received, that a number of our students have in fact experienced the symptoms of COVID, and in some cases were determined at an earlier point in the summer to have been positive, diagnosed as positive for COVID, but have subsequently recovered and are no longer manifesting the signs of that illness. In which case, the determination that we would make is again based on the recommendation of their healthcare provider, and if they choose to return to campus, we will support them in the same way that we would support any other student who is planning on attending. The question may also in turn allow me to bridge to another issue, which is a little bit of an evolution in our own response as a university. And that relates to something that we actually just communicated about yesterday to students, but I think it's important to share with you. Earlier in the summer, we were very challenged here in the Spokane area with the question of the availability of tests for COVID-19, and especially the determination of how long individuals were having to wait for results to come back from the tests themselves. We were very fortunate, however, with some of the advances that have been made in the lab capabilities for the Eastern Washington area to identify a private laboratory, which is a very well-established testing laboratory that has agreed to partner with us to make COVID testing on campus available in a variety of formats. So what I mean by that is that they can certainly do tests when there's a presentation of signs and symptoms of COVID-19 in service to determining whether or not somebody might have COVID. But they also, and this is where the bulk of our effort is going to be deployed, are willing to do surveillance testing, which is essentially testing of the population based on random sampling. And we have contracted with them to have testing available for any student who is arriving on campus, as well as students who are living off campus during the move-in period, so beginning next week, so that anyone who wishes to actually be tested is able to do so, and the university is going to provide that service as part of the move-in experience. We believe that it's important for you to know that from our vantage point, this was always something that we felt would be a good approach, but we were concerned about our ability to reliably depend upon the lab to return results in a reasonable and efficacious amount of time until this partner developed the capability. And we have already been engaged with testing on campus as groups of students that precede the formal move-in have been arriving, and the results have been returned to us effectively within the 48-hour window that has been promised to us quite consistently. So we feel much better about our ability to have information that will inform our response to student infections or potential cases of exposure with this additional testing service available. So that's a little bit of a shift. That's a function of being able to gain for ourselves and our community a much more rapid response time. When the rapid test that has recently been announced becomes more widely available, that also will be extraordinarily helpful, because the response on that is much quicker even than the PCR test that currently is the gold standard that we will be using. And it is also far less expensive, which will allow us to have we hope, a greater range of movement with respect to the number of individuals who can be tested and the frequency of that testing. So that is our current approach, and we will continue to develop our response based upon the availability of the technology and the resources.
On a similar note, could you expand on why it was not made mandatory to test all students that choose to come to campus?
Yes, there's two reasons that we have not elected to move into what might refer to as a mandatory approach. The first is that when we first began to evaluate with the regional health district, the question of when testing would be appropriate, it was in part informed by the capacity for relatively quick turnaround times on the tests and the capacities of the testing laboratories that we had access to, given the challenges that many of them were having just meeting the demands for diagnostic testing as a function of symptoms. So that the evolution of our capabilities here in Eastern Washington has allowed us to engage in this in a way that is much different than where we were even a month ago, when the capabilities were far more limited. And the regional health district was advising us in part against a blanket approach because of a concern that massive amounts of tests would actually overwhelm the capacity of the system to be able to process the total number of tests that were at that time being demanded, given that capacity. But the Spokane Regional Health District has as well expressed concern about the efficacy of instituting mandatory testing as a function of not only cost, although cost is a relevant factor, but also, again, of the volume of tests that would generate without a clear sense in their view of why a massive number of tests at the outset would be an approach that any community would need to take. We have been working closely with them, given the fact that the capacity has now meaningfully and dramatically increased, to seek their advice as epidemiologists on the approach that they believe would be the best one for us to take. And their position is that if we engage in adequate sampling that is truly randomized on a regular basis of the population, that we will be working effectively to try to detect and pick up on incidents in a way that they believe is informed by best practices. We have electively decided to offer testing to any student who wishes to take advantage of that testing at no cost to them or their insurance provider, because surveillance testing is not covered under insurance programs or the CARES Act. But we believe nonetheless that it would be good to offer this opportunity to any student who might want to participate in it upon arrival, both because we believe that under those conditions, many of our students will, in fact, choose to participate, and perhaps many of their parents will encourage them to participate as well. But because we believe that it would be helpful to have a baseline, and where we have thus far offered the opportunity voluntarily, because it is important to note that this question has also been asked from a slightly different angle, and that is in terms of providing people with the option of how it is that they might want to engage with their own healthcare provider around testing and privacy issues related to testing and medical information. We nonetheless believe that this approach is going to make a meaningful impact in terms of our understanding of the health of our population as regards COVID-19. The Spokane Regional Health District maintains as well that one of the greatest challenges that is associated with this particular disease is that it is often the case that it takes a period of time, literally 7 to 10 days, for an individual who might have been exposed to the virus to actually return a positive result on a COVID-19 test. And so that's the reason we've asked our students to actually try to refrain from a lot of socializing outside of their known family group and their known friends group before they arrive, because if there is an exposure event even in transit, a test upon arrival in the regional health district's view is unlikely to pick up on a positive test result for some time. So for that reason, they are actually advocating that a consistent and regular and robust random sampling of our population, really beginning the week following the arrival of students, would be an appropriate way to begin understanding whether COVID-19 is present, absent the manifestation of signs and symptoms. So we are working closely with them and following their advice. And we've been very upfront with them about our own concerns and our own beliefs about what it is that we would like to do and we think might work, while at the same time recognizing that we do value their expertise and their perspective. So we will continue to work closely with them, and a member of the regional health district is on our own institutional COVID-19 compliance task force. So we have regular access to and avail ourselves of the advice, even as we continue to provide them with our plans.
Moving away from testing and into more of an on-campus life perspective, for students that are attending virtually this fall, what will the application process look like for on-campus housing if they choose to return to campus in the spring?
I would say that initially, we will need to actually see where we find ourselves and what we see ourselves managing in terms of a student population when we have moved through the move-in process. We have been working diligently to try to connect with every student who we have not heard from. And while that is not a large population of our students, there are some students who have indicated that they are still in the process of determining whether they want to live on campus or off campus. And those decisions in turn affect the question of what we believe we will have in terms of capacities, even for the remainder of fall as well as the spring. We're committed to working together with our population to open up opportunities for students who wish to join the community on campus in the spring. But the numbers that we have for the fall are going to drive the question of what capacity we find ourselves with come spring. And I think it's fair to say too that the experience that students who come and live with us on campus this fall and their own determinations regarding whether they wish to continue on into the spring in the same configuration or whether they choose to move to a different style of residence and so forth, are all going to be relevant to the question of what options and opportunities we will offer. Having said that, we will ourselves want to try to do everything possible to be in position by mid-October, if possible, to be able to know the answers to those questions and inform our continuing students of housing opportunities that will be made available. So as soon as we have a pretty good handle on both where things have settled in regarding the housing situation, as well as a sense of how the experience is going for our students, we'll be in much better position to answer the question, and we will work diligently to be very communicative with our students, particularly our first-year students, about that. So I assure you, we'll be working hard on that. But the answer is we're not quite sure what that's going to look like until we get a little further into this semester.
Moving off of that question, how many students are you expecting to return to campus this semester?
The answer is that based upon course registrations, and course registrations are affected by payment arrangements as well. So we are now in an increasingly better position to get a sense of where things stand with respect to enrollment. Our returning student enrollments look very strong. We, as it relates on-campus housing, have seen a decrease in the number of students relative to the number that we would ordinarily be hosting on campus. That is in no small part a function of having shared with all of our students that we were suspending the on-campus living requirement. And so there are a significant number of sophomores who have elected to participate in programs on campus, but live off campus. So ordinarily, we would host a population of about 2,700 students on campus in a given year, the vast majority of those being first and second year students. Because there are a number of first year students who have chosen to participate in the academic fall semester remotely, and because there are a number of sophomores who have chosen to move off campus. That on-campus population is probably going to be closer to about 2,000. So that gives you a sense of the number of students who have elected subsequent to the May 1 deadline for admission, that have chosen either to participate remotely or chosen to suspend their academics from the first year class. But it's still a quite robust community of students who are going to be living on campus as well as in the immediate neighborhood. And all of our indications thus far are that the vast majority of our continuing students are planning to continue their education at Gonzaga, and many of them are going to be doing that close by.
Concerning on-campus life, how do you anticipate trying to replicate the Gonzaga community building efforts that you usually create for first-year students, given that some of their classes may be online only?
Very good question. And the answer in part is actually found in the shared experience that students have. Many of our students talk about a foundational dimension to their experience as a Gonzaga experience, as having its roots in the communal experience of sharing in residence life. So across the time that I've been involved with Gonzaga, there has always been an emphasis, even within the larger residence halls, at trying to develop and design programs and sort of an ethos within the residence hall that emphasizes the importance of the residence hall community. And in the larger residence halls, that breaks itself down into the floor or the wing of the residence hall that a particular individual lives in. So certainly there is an important component of experiencing one's education as part of a class that meets at a given time and on a given day, and engages in interactive discussion in an in-person mode. And that's probably one of the reasons that so many of our faculty, appreciating that not only for our students, but also themselves as faculty members, are choosing to try to work in a format that will allow for some in-person interaction as well as remote delivered interaction as space and as the environment allows us to. But a significant component of individual students' experience of what it means to be part of the GU community also occurs and exists outside of the classroom as well. And some people would further underscore that sometimes, depending upon the term and the opportunities that one avails oneself of or chooses to be involved with, can even be more significantly expressed in the co-curricular part of the experience. So this is one of the reasons that for our students who are going to be participating with us from home or from a remote location away from the campus environment, it's important that we make sure that they are aware of the many opportunities that are being hosted and created for them to be engaged in activities and opportunities apart from their courses, because this is an important part of the environment that we both try to create in ordinary times and tried to even do some work on in the face of the pandemic this past spring. So our hope is that we will allow students, regardless of the mix of modalities and some of the challenges associated with the academic coursework that is necessitated by doing this in the face of the pandemic, to nonetheless see and avail themselves of the really the variety of opportunities that our colleagues and their fellow students are creating in view of this circumstance. It is not going to be the kind of year where we're going to be permitted to or necessarily allowed to do all of the kinds of things that we would ordinarily do with ultimate freedom of movement. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't going to be meaningful alternatives to nonetheless be engaged in many of the same kinds of activities. And this really has forced a lot of individuals who are involved with the project to think very differently and in turn very creatively about what those opportunities and experiences are going to look like and how we can possibly even reach more students than we traditionally have, because there are also some opportunities that technology and alternative approaches open up for greater access. So it will definitely be different, but I'm not sure that given the creativity and the innovative spirit that I have seen through the course of the summer, it's going to be a compromise. What we do want is to all be recognizing that we are working in a way that recognizes that the severe limitations that are affecting all parts of society also do apply to universities. There's just no way for a university to carve itself out as an exception to many of the restrictions and the challenges that do exist in broader society. But there is also tremendous opportunity, even in this sort of challenging circumstance, I believe, for people who, alternative to kind of continued isolation, to recognize that there is much about this experience that is shared and much that is to recommend itself by sharing out of this experience as well. I do really think about students who have been denied a lot of things that their sort of previous generations have experienced as they kind of concluded high school and been obligated to do so much in so many different ways. The university is a community of individuals that always is experienced by our students in my own hearing as small subsets of formed groups, sometimes quite small, sometimes some of the most significant relationships are with the person next door or down the hall or in a club or somebody who was found on a retreat. And those opportunities can become incredibly powerful and important ones to support and to create. So it will be different. But I am very excited and very hopeful that as we reconstitute ourselves as this newly blended community of individuals, that we will find and we will create opportunities together that are going to be deeply meaningful and that are going to allow for the development of relationships that I believe will be lifelong relationships. I believe they will be relationships of significance. We're going to do everything that we can to create the opportunity for those kinds of powerful experiences to occur. And hopefully, even if a student begins this experience from a remote place, remote from campus, there will be this sort of amazing moment where we finally are all of us able to come together and to connect in a new way, still somehow not feeling completely unfamiliar. It will be an important journey, and we will just continue to learn from each other how best to make that possible and to support one another along the way.
This next question will be the final one of the evening before we conclude the webinar. If a student tests positive and has to quarantine, what is the policy for retesting to make sure the student has become negative?
So the protocol that we have developed for quarantine and isolation is an extensive one, and there will be information that will be provided in detail next week that will allow for this, as well as a set of other related issues, to be conveyed and to allow you to have even more information than I have time to provide here. But what I would say to you is that the determination as to whether or not an individual should move into quarantine is one that is based upon evidence that that individual has been exposed to another person who is positive. So the unfortunate reality of this disease is that there will be individuals who, if it is determined that they have been meaningfully exposed, which by the definition is an exposure event of longer than 15 minutes in close proximity in duration, will need to quarantine until such time as the doctor, in our case on campus, or the medical provider determines that the time has come for an initial test for COVID-19 is to be administered. So there will be individuals who will need to quarantine for, at this point, at least 7 days before a test can be administered that we believe would result in a true positive. So there would be individuals who might have been exposed who move into quarantine, and after the appropriate period of time has passed, receive the test and the results may be negative because despite the exposure event, they didn't contract the virus. And so one of the beliefs that we have based on how we have been studying the phenomenon of this disease, its etiology, and also how other campuses are working with it, is such that there may be numerous students who, based upon the contact tracing work that our staff do, are determined to be in need of quarantine housing, but are actually ultimately determined to not be positive. If a student, however, after the initial quarantine period comes back with a positive result, then they would move into isolation status, which is differentiated in the sense that now we know and have determined that that individual does have COVID and is in need of support as an individual with COVID to ensure that the staff are working now to monitor with them their symptoms, if any, and to continue to support them through the course of the illness. And ultimately, we will follow the isolation protocol to determine that individual is now safe to return into the broader population. So isolation and quarantine, kind of two successive stages with somewhat different approaches, but always with a high level of attention and support. Because one of the things that we are aware of and that we have been working hard on considering is how do you best support an individual who may or may not have contracted the illness, but nonetheless needs to remain separated until a determination is made. And that is an experience that we want to make sure we do our very best to be there with our students through, because I think it's important to acknowledge that those kinds of experiences, particularly for the very sociable, typical college student, they'd be a challenge for anybody. And we want to do what we can in every single case to try to support and be connected with our students, whatever status they may be in. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of the approach that we're taking. And again, as the science advances and as our understanding of the disease advances, we will adjust using the very best information that we have available to us to try to make sure that, coupled with our experience of what we see this year, we're doing our very best work to support our students. So I know that that was the last question that I was given to answer, and respecting the time that you've all committed to this webinar, and my colleagues as well. We'll have to end, but I do want to say thank you so much for participating, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of the beginning of your weekend too. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, President McCullough, for spending your evening with our incoming parents and families. Before we conclude, I wanted to share a special message with you from one of our parents, families, or supporters. The message is, my incoming student and I are feeling grateful for the safety protocols, excited about traveling to Spokane, and I'm lifted and inspired by your message. Thank you. Please let us know if you need anything from Boston. To our parents, families, and supporters, we look forward to connecting with you over the weekend at our live sessions and in person during the week. Thank you, and go Zags.